Hello everybody, my name is David Chavez and this is my portfolio for Academy of Arts. In this video of the portfolio, I'm going to be going over camera tracking and how to add CG elements into live action footage. For example, in this scene right here, I have Iron Man Mark 17 inside of a live action recorded shot. This is just the camera tracking portion of the part. I'm not ready to do the nuke portion. That's going to be another video in the portfolio. However, I'm going to go over the knowledge of camera tracking. So camera tracking is where you, for starters, get your footage, you camera track it, which means you tell the camera where every location is in 3D space. So you can have a 3D camera going through your scene in 3D space. Now in this video, we are going to retract this footage and apply the same model onto the scene. So as you can see here, I already modeled out the Iron Man armor and textured it myself, and I already lit the scene. So we're gonna go over all of that, and let's go. So I'm gonna start a new project. We are using Blender 3.1. So we just gotta go ahead and so first starters, we're gonna load in our footage. It's easier to always load in your footage as an image sequence. It gives the program easier time looking at it by picture instead of looking at it as the whole footage. So for starters, we open the clip, and I know for starters this is going to be a 30 frames per second footage. So you set scene frames, prefetch. So our main goal in this scene is to detect key features in the footage to apply reference and models to. So as you see, we have the footage going here. We have 302 frames of footage, leading up to roughly around 10 seconds due to it being 30 frames per second. So there's two ways you can do it in Blender. You can do it manually, which means you go ahead and manually add camera tracking markers and tracking forward. That's what you would do if normally I do that if the detect features doesn't really do a good of a job. However, right now I know for sure that detect features will work. However, as always, what I tend to go with. So first things first, I usually put the pattern size and the search size up. The pattern size is how big to detect features. This will detect all the features in the scene. So the pattern size is the box in the center. That's where what your tracking will be, and then the box on the outside will be the area is gonna search. So that's the outmost area. It will search that track. So we have all these tracks loaded up here. So select all of them. We're gonna hit normalize. What normalize does is if there's any sudden light changes in the scene, Blender won't lose the track. It'll do its best to keep hold of the track at all times. Motion movement, I'm gonna put this perspective. This one always gives the best results, as if your camera is constantly moving throughout the scene, like this one's moving forward, this will make sure that the tracks deform to match the camera. So after all is selected, we're gonna go to the track settings, and we're gonna track forward. As you can see, most of the tracks drop towards the end, and that's great. That's fine. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna go to a spot where you don't see most of our tracks drop. So roughly right here, you see most of our tracks dropping. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go ahead and delete these tracks that don't have like a set point. So as you can see, these don't have set points. Just delete those tracks, get them out of the way. Alt D will hide the tracks that aren't good. They only appear when good. So right here I can see I have less tracks. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go ahead and hit detect features again. Track forward. And typically I will do this until it no longer works. So I have tracked my entire scene. Blender only needs 8 tracking markers to get a scene ready. However, one key feature I forgot to mention was under color management, you do want to put this as standard. This will change the colors of the scene to the standard colors of your footage. So as you can see, we have a good amount of trackers here. We lose most of them right here again. So I'm just going to go ahead and do this one more time. Track this forward. The more tracking markers you have, the better, as always. So now, as you can see, we do have some stray trackers. We just going to delete those ourselves. And here I'm just going to clean up this manually, just so we can have a cleaner. So now, as you can see, we have 8. We do have 8 trackers at all times, and this looks pretty solid to me. So what we're going to do now is we're going to try solving our camera. So actually, right here we have a dead spot. So I'm going to hit the take features again. Roll with it. I mainly want the ground to be the ones that hang on the most, so we have a reference of ground at all times. Like right here, we don't have any reference of ground. I'm going to delete these because we don't have any trackers. So right here, no ground references here. So this is where I'll normally do manual camera tracking, which is I'll go in here, I'll click a spot, and I will boost up the search boxes, perspectives on, and I'll track forward, and then track that same track. It starts tracking again right here, backwards. I do this to hope to get better tracks. So my main goal right here is just to track the ground, as that is what we will need in order to get this to work. So right here, we need more trackers on the ground. Take features again. As long as 2 or more ground planes started to actually attach, we should be good. Here we are. Okay, I think this should be good. So now I'm going to go ahead and solve the camera. So solving the camera pretty much is just going to allow you to create the camera in 3D space. Now we have 2 options under the solve tab. We have the tripod and the keyframe. If this was a nodal pan, which means if this footage was shot on a tripod, I would obviously hit the tripod setting. However, knowing that this footage is movement, I do know that it's not a tripod shot. Now, the keyframe button allows you to have Blender automatically pick the best keyframes of where the camera moves the most. However, if you know the camera moves the most between frame 140 and 200, you would put that in keyframe A and B. However, I usually just let Blender figure this out on its own. It's pretty good at it. I do not know the focal length, optical center, and radio distortion of this footage, as it is stock footage, so I have Blender put these automatically. However, if you do know, you will go into camera, lens, and this is where you put all of that information to get better track. However, I did not shoot this footage, so I wouldn't know, so we're just going to allow Blender to do that themselves. So then we get to click Solve Camera, and this is where Blender will get all the points he's developed and try to figure out the camera's move in 3D space. This part is what takes the longest part. However, it's going to give you a solve error. Usually we want that solve error to be less than 1. Last time I tracked the scene, it was at 0.6, so I'm hoping to get somewhat close results. And we got 0.65, which is great. So where's to go off of this? Click here. Now you can scroll down to set up tracking scene. We're click on that, and as you can see, all our tracking markers get put on a plane. So now all we gotta do is start setting up our scene. In order to do that, I'm gonna bring this part up. Okay, we're gonna delete the default cube Blender has and the light source Blender has. Now we need to set a origin. So I want this to be our origin, is where the center of the world will be. This seems like the center of our ground, so we're going to set origin. and we're going to scale this down. Now the only problem we have now is that the X and Y axes are off. The reason why this is important is because when you start adding elements to your scene, they're going to pop up and they're going to be dysfunctional. So in order to fix this, we're going to rotate the camera itself in 3D space. However, before we do this, we have to make sure that we are off the 3D cursor. So now we're going to rotate the camera by, rotate the camera by Z, get the planes lined up. So this X and Y is now lined up. Now we need to make sure, so my goal is to have this plane be the ground. So if I were to scale this plane by Y, as you can see, it shoots into the sky. We do not want that. We want this plane to go down this this pathway here. In order to do that, we're going to grab the camera one more time. We're going to rotate it by X. And this is going to allow us to do our best and rotate X. I think that's a good job. And then we're going to rotate Y. We're trying to rotate the X. So that looks good. So now we grab that plane and we scale it by Y. Now we're going down the path. Usually what I end up doing, however, is instead of stealing it, close this up, reopen it up. There we go. I tend to grab the model itself and just grab the Y so I can always easily edit it. Scaling will work fine, but this typically gives me the best results. So now we're just gonna make the ground here. That looks just about right. So we're ready to go down here. So this should be fine. Right here should be fine. If you really want to get this accurate, we just grab this point and move it to the side. There we go. Now we have this entire ground plane covered. However, we do need to add, so when the sunlight hits the model, you can put in the center. As you can see in the scene, we do have walls, and that's going to make a big difference when the model, lighting the model up, because if you just put it in your HDRI or your environment, you're going to get straight sunlight, and that's not going to work. You have to have the wall references so that the model is lit properly. So before we continue, we're going to continue the cycles and GPU. And I'm going to set this to 200. I'm going to leave the, actually we're going to go to 498. I can handle that. Samples is like how much pixels you get render. So what we're going to do now is we're going to set this to be a shadow catcher. Let's double check that. Shadow catcher. Perfect. So now what we're going to do is we're going to try to remake the walls. Usually what I tend to do is this is where all the trackers you put into place. As you can see, we have a ton of trackers. This is mainly because we use the text features over and over again, and it tends to overlap tracks, which is fine. So what I tend to do here is I grab one of these. I choose Control S, cursor to selected. So now the cursor, we make a plane here. We rotate it by Y. Now it's on the wall that we need to be. So if I grab this by Y, we go, scale it by Z. See, that should work. So now we grab this end, grab by Y. We're gonna have this going all the way down our path. Perfect. Now we have a wall. Now, you pretty much just do the same thing on the other side. However, I'm going to make this wall a little bit taller just to cover that portion. Next thing you got to do is you're going to want to grab here and do the exact same thing. So rotate Y 90 degrees. And now you have a wall there. However, this looks a little bit off. So what you're going to do is you're going to grab here, grab Y, cover that. There we go. This looks like it's roughly a good height. So you're going to keep grabbing it all the way down. Grab Z just to match the height. There we go. And I like to change, this is a personal preference for me, but I like to change the textures to random just so I can see the better. And now you can see we have the entire scene good to go and recreated. Here, rough geometry here. Of course, the more you want the character to interact with the environment, the more detailed you're gonna have to make these blockouts. However, we're just putting an Iron Man model in the center of the scene, so we don't really need to be too detailed. We just need these to block out the sunlight. Now, the next thing we gotta do is we're gonna have to bring in our Iron Man model. So what I like to do is create a new collection, name this one Iron Man, and click here, import FBX, and let's grab our model. So we'll take a bit for Blender to apply the model, but once it does, there it is. So let's go ahead and cursor world origin. So now it'll scale off the world origin. And now let's position it in the center of our scene. Now it's all about scaling the model to fit our reference. So now in order for this to work, however, we are going to need to now be able to see our footage in the background here. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to grab this and this, grab our two reference ones and move them into their own collection. These are going to be called hold because we're going to go ahead and move over here and put hold out layer. This will make it so that they are affecting the scene but not visible in the scene, so we can still see the footage underneath it. So now what we got to do is we click on the hold layer and we're going to click to not visualize them. And the reason why I did this is so that I can see the Iron Man model and how big I need to be. So as you can see here, if I grab on the X, there's like a little bit of a door there. So I want to scale this just so he can fit. Looks like he'll be able to fit in the door. I like to use that as like a little bit of reference to height. So it looks like he would fit in through this pathway over here now and this door. However, he is somewhat into the floor. So let's go ahead and fix that. Move it up a little bit. There we go. That looks good. Yes, there we go. So now we have the floor here. Iron Man. Select objects. And you want this to barely hit the floor. That looks good. Okay, now. He looks roughly about the same height. Now you have your movement in 3D space. This is the part where I would texture the model. However, I have pre-made textures across all my Iron Man models that I've designed. So in order to open this up, I would just append them. So now here's me going ahead and going ahead and importing my textures for the model. So usually texturing, it's pretty straightforward. You plug in nodes. I'll go over my materials I use here. So now we just go ahead and apply this. Let's go ahead and create a new layout so we can see the scene. As you can see, the model already comes with textures. However, we gotta load our own. So we're going to go in the shader editor. We're going to click on the texture. Gold mask. So here's the texture I made for the gold mask. Mixing different textures like that from textures.com and other sites, you can create your own. So what I'm going to do here is put the gold onto every piece of armor, and then replace this with the silver texture I made, and just copy it to this one. And now we need the red. Whether so now if we render this out, you can see that it's textured, however, it's dark. And that's not how it's supposed to be. So let's go ahead and cycle this. Why isn't this? So now what do we need to do to allow the lighting to happen? So first of all, I'm going to put the opacity all the way up so we can get a better lighting reference. So now we're going to load in what's called an HDRI. An HDRI is an environment map used for reflection and lighting. So I did find an HDRI that matches the scene, and it's currently this one. So here's an HDRI, roughly matches our scene here. So now as you can see, we have this. In order to get rid of this, we got to go to film and transparent. Boom. Now as you can see, it's too bright. I like to boost this down to 0.6, maybe 0.5. And you can mess around with it as much as, you can tweak this as much as you like. 0.3. That looks even better. Let's see if we can find a different one. This one looks good, maybe. Nope, too blue. Yep, this one would work. Now, I don't like how there's a reflection right here, so we're going to go ahead and change that. In the shader editor tab, we're going to go ahead into the world, and we're going to hit Shift W on the keyboard and add a texture setup, and just rotate this until I like the way it looks. I like the way that looks. Right now, we're going to boost up the brightness. Not too much. That should look good. As you can see, it kind of blends in with the scene a little bit more now with the lighting it's currently having. If you still don't like the positioning, we can change that. And boost to 0.4. There you go. So now it matches. Now the lighting seems to match the scene. The scaling seems to be pretty good. And now if we go ahead and go to the scene, scene's tracked. So now Iron Man is now fully integrated into the scene. As you can see, we have the shadow catcher. So the shadows in the scene are, this is a pretty plainly lit scene, so there won't be as much shadows. So the shadow catcher serves still a good purpose if there were shadows. However, as you can see, there's really no shadows in the main footage that we have here. So there'll be no shadows casting on the ground. So mainly it's about tracking at this point, and then color correction and grading. Next thing you would do is you render out all your passes. So we're going to go over here and select the passes that we like to render out. For this one, I'm going to render out DZ, miss pass, position pass. Let's see. I am going to render out the materials index pass so I can edit each material as I please. If, let's say, I see the red too saturated. The emission pass, the ambient oscillation pass for sure, and the shadow catcher pass, so we can render all the shadows in case we need to add shadows. And then cryptomats, I like to render out every cryptomat, just because the more cryptomats you have, the more control over the materials in the post-production stages. So now I'm going to end this video. So what we did here is camera track our scene, applied our model to the center of our scene, and now what we're going to do is render all these layers out and then bring them into Nuke for compositing. So that will be my next video on this portfolio. This is just a video about basic motion tracking, camera tracking, and applying HDRI textures and a model to the scene. My name is once again David Chavez. I am a student at the Academy of Arts. My major is bachelor's in visual effects and animation. And thank you.